Welcome everyone to the second workshop in our personal branding series. I'm Alex Larson. I am the senior designer with Alpha National and have been with Alpha for around 2 years.
And hi, everyone. My name is Suhaili Ramon, and I'm the marketing director for Alpha National. And I've also been here for 2 years. I have almost a worth decade of marketing and advertising experience, both across agency and now in-house, with some clients such as Google, USPS, and Dunkin'. So that's a little bit about us and our experience.
Oh, I'll give my experience.
Yeah,
I've been doing graphic design for almost 15 years. So it's been a long and varied career of working in-house, freelance, on a variety of different projects over the years.
And we're very excited about this second session. If you all weren't here for the first session, that was the audit portion. And that session, we went across essentially figuring out, do you have a personal brand? And if not, then how do you go about creating it, right? Really asking some tough questions about where do you see yourself, the goals, how do other people see you, how do you interact with others, really taking an audit in a current state of your own personal brand and who you want to become in order to create that foundation for your personal brand. So I'm gonna kick it off to Alex to give us a little bit more about what we're going to be talking about for the next 20 to 30 minutes together.
Okay, so this workshop delves into the 4 V's of brand development: value, vision, voice, and visuals. For a quick overview, value is what you do. Vision is your why, your what, and your for who. Voice is how your brand sounds and how it sounds both in email and like out loud, but also any sort of professional in-person situation and in things like text messages and Zoom calls. And then visuals is what your brand looks like. It includes fonts and colors and logos and things like that. So these 4 things are covered in sections 3 and 4 of our personal branding workbook, which you can download here. Make sure you put in the password correctly. It should be all caps. And before we really dive into those 4 things, I just want to clarify a couple things. The first being that you and your brand are separate entities. Yes, it's your personal brand, but no one can live a brand 24/7. That's very taxing on yourself and everybody else around you. But you and your brand are separate. You don't have to cram every single aspect of your personality into your personal brand. It's not required, and you really don't need to. You can just hone in on the things that you want to promote about yourself and highlight about yourself, the things that matter and the things that may help you find a new job or contract work or speaking opportunities. This is the time to kind of go back and look at your audit and see what things you really, really want to highlight and what things are more personal versus in the world personal. So if there's something you don't really want to share, you don't have to. And if there's something you really, really want to highlight, maybe that's the focus over every other facet of your personality or professional history. So that's first thing. And the second thing is just a reiteration of something we said last time, which is your brand will grow and evolve as you do. And that is completely okay. Your brand is a work in progress always. Just like you are always a work in progress. You're never going to reach a final 100% perfect, complete aspect of yourself or version of your brand. It's just always going to be something that's always constantly in flux. So just want to make sure that I clarify those before we began and give you a little time to scan the QR code. All right, so that takes us to our first V, value.
And it's actually one of my favorite things that I love to think about and I think about pretty often. So knowing your value, the value is all about what you do. It's a value that you bring to the table through the problem that you are solving. And so in the marketing world, personal branding, in this side of the world, we call that the unique value proposition. And honestly, not just your personal brand, your favorite brands in the world all have a special offering that is the reason why we build trust with that brand. That is the reason why we build loyalty with that brand, is because you know that it's not necessarily that they are the only person doing that thing, but they are the only person that do it in the way that you like or the way that it resonates with you, and therefore you continue to go back to them. And so I always like to use the example of when you're a supermarket and you're going down the bread aisle, there's not just one bread brand, right? Like there are hundreds of bread brands. And that is because each bread brand has their own unique value proposition. And it resonates with each and every one of us slightly different. In the way that we continue to purchase the brand is what makes the value that much more important. So essentially, your unique value proposition is a statement that clearly and easily communicates the value of your product, your brand, and or your service. So essentially, I like to call it that it's your secret sauce, right? It's the way that you um, tell someone else what you do, who you do it for, and how you do it is slightly different than other people, in the hopes that that person engaging with you is going to resonate with what you're saying. So actually, let's take my unique value proposition, as it is something that I think about pretty often, as an example, as I walk through the overarching couple of questions that you have to think about when creating your own unique value proposition. So my own is connecting you with diverse communities through creative communications. So the first question when you are creating your unique value proposition is what makes you different. And essentially you want to think about the features, the benefits, or the components of your service that makes you different and makes you stand out from the rest. So for me, I bring the expertise of understanding the nuances of reaching, engaging, and connecting with different audiences through marketing efforts, right? So that is the what makes me different of the part of my unique value proposition. Who is your audience? So the connecting you to with diverse communities. When I was thinking about my unique value proposition, the you is can be a CEO, the decision makers, um, maybe a marketing director, marketing manager seeking additional support in their marketing efforts. I was really intentional about if someone is coming to my LinkedIn profile, if someone is coming to my website, who potentially should this person be, or who do I want them to be, and what do I want them to learn about me when they are in these like digital footprints that I've created for them. So since I am looking for folks to come hire me in for marketing contracting capacities, or just simply learn more about me, come hire me for a speaking engagement that speaks about engaging with diverse communities, or how do you create a multicultural marketing plan. These are expertise that I know the decision makers would want to learn about before they make the decision. And so that is the who that I am targeting through my unique value proposition. The what do I offer? Very clearly, I say connecting you with diverse communities through creative communications. The what I'm offering is creative communications. That could be, as I just mentioned, a marketing plan, a social media strategy, that can be an advertising strategy or advertising copy. These are all things that I've done before, things that I'm still consistently doing now. But creative communications is a nice way to just package that up very easily, without having to get too in the weeds to my target audience. And then what is the value? So that is when you highlight the opportunity that you're providing. So the value for me is the fact that I can do that in two languages, both English and Spanish, that I can do that through different mediums, right? I said I could do advertising, I could do strategy, I could do a plan, I can also execute. These are all about how I get to do the creative communications. How am I connecting you to these diverse communities? So these are just 4 questions that you really want to sit down and think about. What is it exactly that you want your personal brand to stand for? What is the value that you are bringing, right? So in your day job, if you're starting to do a side hustle, a side project, what is it exactly that you're trying to do through this new endeavor? And then what is the value that you're bringing? And how is that value slightly different than what is already in the market?
Yeah.
So if we mentioned before, the first session was a lot about the audit, about your current personal brand. This part is really thinking about, well, now you already have that clear goal and understanding about who you are and where you want to go. This is really thinking about, so what is the value added that I am bringing? And
what is the reason someone wants to talk to you over somebody else? Like, why are you the person that they want to be engaging with versus Joe Smith down the street? Like, why are you special? That's kind of what you're trying to say in a nice, clear, concise way that Zuhaili just gave her example, which hers is far better than mine. I will not share mine.
But I think even if you were to explain, because I think a lot of people may resonate with where you're coming from, right? Like, I think most normal people don't go around thinking about their unique value proposition like I perhaps do. But maybe if you were to give just a little bit of an example of like,
so my unique value proposition and what we're going to cover in the next thing, the vision, kind of fall into the same category. I have one sentence versus having two separate things, mostly because my brand is more used to showcase my design work as a portfolio versus a business endeavor. So my personal statement is a graphic designer that creates bold, dynamic brands built to tell a story. So mine is a little more along the lines of both a combination of value and mission / vision. Because I'm not saying that I'm doing anything. My value is that like my design is more storytelling versus, oh, I made you a really nice flyer, which is also very important. But like and the things that I enjoy doing in branding and design work is kind of being like, well, what do you want? What are we doing? What are we trying to say? And kind of build from there. It's why I enjoy designing Alpha's conventions so much, is I get to tell a whole story in 4 days with all sorts of design work and things that play in, including like trade show booths and swag and all those kinds of things. It's just really fun for me to be able to kind of be like, oh, here's the theme, and like, what can we say about the theme through the artwork that we're doing, or through our social media posts, or through our advertisements on LinkedIn or Google. It's just a fun way to engage for me. So it's more along the lines of like what I enjoy doing and like what I want to be doing versus here's what I can do for you. So it's a little bit different in that sense of just, this is covering what I like versus here's what I can do.
And now moving to, what is your vision? So this is the what, your why, and your for who. So your brand vision really outlines the long-term goals and aspiration for the future in terms of growth and impact, and that's what Alex was just speaking to. So I'll walk us through the vision. So for mission versus vision. So for mission, you're going to have a business objective. This is more aligned if you were to have a personal brand that you're going to want maybe in 3 to 5 years, have your own small business, maybe starting with a mission just so it can guide your vision will be helpful. Mm-hmm. It's present, it's the cause, it defines your core purpose, right? This is a statement that's really going to establish everything that you do and that you decide not to do, because if it doesn't align with your mission, then it's definitely not going to align with your vision for your brand. It defines what you stand for, and it has very clear standards.
And which is the opposite, I guess, of the vision, which is more about your aspirations. It's about where you want to be versus like what you want to be doing. It's all about the future. It's looking towards where you're headed. It's the effect it defines your core goal. So your goal doesn't necessarily need to be super defined. It can be more broad in the sense of your goal being, I want to have more speaking engagements. I want to design more event design. I want to be a manager in a couple of years. Your goal can be a little bit more nebulous versus very concrete. It's where you want to be going. It's your guiding light to your desired outcome, and it's a clear direction to that outcome. It's saying to yourself and for your brand, this is where I want to be. This is where I want to be headed. This is where I want to eventually end up. And that eventually could be 3 weeks. It could be 3 years. It could be 10 years. It's all dependent on you and what you want out of your goal and out of your vision. Anything else to add before we go on?
I don't think so.
Okay. Which brings us to our third V, and starting into the super creative part of this endeavor is voice.
And for voice, I think one of the most important thing about voice is the words that you tend to use and how you use them, right? So it's the tone that you use your words in, how you communicate with your audience. Does how you want to communicate align with how you want to be perceived? I really think the voice is truly what sets you apart. Like you can have a very different mission statement, vision statement, and that's going to look great on paper, but the voice is truly what makes your brand come to life. So just as Alex was mentioning earlier, this is how your voice comes through on an email, the text messages, when you present, the mannerisms that you use. Like your voice is a lot more than just your words. It's truly your personality that's coming off of a paper, your website, the type of things that you post on the internet. Like these are all things that to a certain extent, yes, you can curate, but then how consistent you are with your voice, that is what your audience is actually going to take with you, right? So for example, I come across very confident, witty, assertive, and that's across everything that I do throughout a presentation, the way that I interact with my friends, with my colleagues. They can all probably say a certain level of, she's very confident when she presents, or she's going to give a witty, funny answer to something. These are all things that even when you don't think are part of your voice are actually the voice that people learn you the best.
Yeah. And in contrast, my personal brand voice is very playful. I make a lot of jokes, particularly when I present. It's a little dry occasionally, but I tend to be more high energy. I have a lot of hand gestures when I talk. I tend to be a little bit just kind of excitable, I guess. And I'm generally fairly approachable / casual. I don't lean very heavily into being very professional. And when I give any sort of talk, I don't lean into that. Like I'm very staid and professional setting. I tend to be a little bit more relaxed, a little more casual of being like, this is how it is. This is how I think. Here's how it goes. And most people will say that about me as well. And it reflects also how I hold myself in public as well. So I don't come across as particularly like unapproachable. I'm usually very smiley. Very energetic. People come talk to me. And that also plays into my brand voice. Mm-hmm. So if I made all of my things in my emails and all of my things on my portfolio website and everything that I engaged with complete without myself, like the things that are text-based. And that was all those three things: playful, high energy, approachable. And then you reached out to me to do a contract work, and we got on a Zoom call. And I got on that Zoom call and I spoke in a monotone voice with no inflection. And I wore all dark colors. And I told you that I was very morose, very sad, which if that's your brand, that's your brand. But like, I just told everybody on the internet that I was really high energy because it had all these bright colors and I had all of these like exclamation points. And then you got on the Zoom call and I was like very, very sad and very, very like closed off and unemotional. you would kind of have that moment and go, okay, is this the same person who has been posting all of these things or sending all of these emails or doing all of this design? Like, who is this person that I'm actually talking to? Is this who are you? I thought I knew you, and nothing aligns now. So it's an important thing to consider of like, if you know that in professional settings, you are a consummate professional and you don't want people knowing about your personal life, or you don't necessarily want anybody asking you personal questions or asking you how you spent your vacation, you need to be sure that when you engage your personal brand online, that it is in line with how you act in person.
Right.
Because it's really hard to fake being something you are entirely not. It's very time consuming and very taxing. So you want to have your personal brand align with at least some aspect of how you act in real life. So it doesn't necessarily need to be all of it, because we all encompass a wide range of emotions and feelings and ways we interact with people. But saying that, like, you know that your personal way of speaking with the average person or someone you meet at the workplace is very professional or very high energy or very assertive or confident or funny, or however you interact with people most commonly, that might be something you lean into at least a little bit in your personal brand voice, because it's easier for you to come up with that.
And I think a great way, because again, these are things that most people go about their day and they don't have to think about. So a great place to start is, even if you go on Pinterest or on Google, whatever search
engine you like,
using search voice adjectives or personal brand voice adjectives, just to give you some words to start thinking about. And then choose about 3 to 5 words that you think align with yourself, and then send those words to perhaps your best friends or your family. And if they don't align, again, a lot of these exercises that we had you do on the first session of talking to your peers, talk to your colleagues, they are the ones that interact with you
the most.
So they are going to know how to describe you. And those are the words that you should most likely use and leverage, because those are the words that most likely is going to resonate with the audience that you are trying to target as well.
And ask the coworker, friend, family member that's going to answer you honestly.
Yeah, that's
don't ask the one that's going to be like, yeah, I totally agree. Ask the one who's going to be like, no, that's not right.
Yeah.
Like, make sure you ask the one who's going to give you an honest answer and an honest, like, review of what you're doing. You should, in all honesty, be reviewing each thing as you build it. So as you created your unique value proposition, as you created your mission and vision statements, or a little Frankenstein combo of all 3 of those things, make sure you talk to people and ask people who might be potential clients down the road. Ask people you trust, and ask people that you know will give you an honest answer. Don't ask. It's not necessarily great to ask strangers, but if that's what you want to be doing, you can. But ask people that are going to give you honest feedback that's reliable, and a good critique, not a mean critique. Like, someone who's going to give you constructive feedback, not just like, man, I don't like it. Which takes us to our final V, which is visuals. Which, if you are a creative person, this is where the fun begins. If you are not a creative person, or anything sort of creative scares you, I promise that I will make this as painless as possible. Okay, so visuals within a personal brand can encompass a wide range of things. It includes logos, typography, which is, for non-designers, it's fonts. So it's like whatever font you use. Colors, style, and imagery. So both photography and videography. So this is the last thing that you want to touch. And I'm going to tell you why. It's because you want to have everything else already laid out, so that when you start your visual process, you've already thought about 99.9% of these things, and you're not going to try and fit the colors you want to use to a brand voice that doesn't resonate with you, or to a mission or a value that doesn't resonate with you or your potential audience. You want to have all of that set and then do this part so that you kind of narrow your focus a little bit more. Because if you start with the entire rainbow of colors that you can choose from, which is vast and varied, A, it's overwhelming, and B, you end up choosing colors that might be something that you like just personally and not necessarily something that will resonate or work well with your brand or your mission, your value, your brand voice, things like that. So you want to touch this last. And you also want to think about the things of visuals, just like with voice, the things within the visual category that you don't necessarily think about. So with voice, we talked about how you speak in a presentation, how you comport yourself, whether or not it fits your actual personality. The same thing with visuals. You want to think about your personal style. You want to think about your aesthetics. You can think about how you decorate your house if that's how you want to think about it. But thinking about this visual aspects of your personal brand includes yourself. It includes whether or not you wear makeup or not. It includes whether or not you are very, very, very fastidious and clean, and you're always clean shaven, and you always have your hair cut on point, and everything you wear is expertly tailored. It's whether or not you do your hair really, really fancy every day, or you kind of just pull it back into a bun or wear it down. It's whether you wear jeans or whether you wear a pencil skirt. It's all of those things that we have been thinking about for years about how we show ourselves in public, but doesn't necessarily something we think about in terms of this is part of my personal brand. It goes along the same lines of what I was saying about my brand voice. If I show the whole world the brand, which is on my website, which is very colorful, it's got a lot of like little kind of clip arty things on it, it's very bright, and I show up at every single event that you meet me at after seeing all of these things, wearing all black and not wearing a single color, you might kind of be like, are you the same person who did that website? Like, where's the disconnect here? The same, or if your brand is super professional looking and you show up at an event wearing ripped jeans, people are going to kind of be like, ooh, maybe not. So taking that into consideration as you think about your personal brand visuals is important, because you want it to match your style. It doesn't have to match perfectly, but it should at least go. So I'm going to take us in to the first part. Welcome to the crash course of brand design. Okay, we're going to talk about what's your typeface, which there are four basic types of fonts. There's serif, sans serif, slab serif, and script. There are more, but these are the four basics. So a serif font, you can tell a serif font because it has little feet on it. And generally, it means that the font itself is of different weights. There's different types of thickness of line within each letter. Sans serif has a general uniform thickness of line for each letter with no little feet. The feet are called, as I'm sure you all guessed, a serif. And then there is a slab serif, which is a kind of weird combo love child between a serif and a sans serif font. They have the little feet, but generally speaking, the thickness of the letter is all the same. And then there's a script font, which can go from this one, which is a very bold script, to something that's very, very flowy and ornate calligraphy. So I go into a lot more detail about fonts and what they mean and all of those things in the workbook, but just to kind of delve in, we do subconsciously attribute different feelings and emotions and ideas to different fonts. So with a serif font, we tend to associate it with words like tradition or sophisticated or classic. With sans serif fonts, we tend to associate it with things like clean, modern, stable, universal. With slab serifs, we tend to go more towards bold, strong, funky. And then with script fonts, they go more towards elegant or sophisticated, creative, feminine. We have these associations with these styles of fonts just through cultural use over the years, but they still kind of they have the same meanings today. There's of course exceptions. There's of course things that you can kind of do to make things be edgy or different or new. But for the most part, those are the associations we have with these fonts. It also goes with most fonts also come in different weights, like regular, bold, italic. You can also have fonts that come in weights like thin, medium, bold, semi-bold, black. Like they have various thicknesses, and those thicknesses can also play a role in how we view things. The bolder weight fonts, or the thicker the font is, the more we tend to think of things as bold, strong, confident. And then the thinner weight, so the skinnier fonts, it's a font weight called like fine or thin, where it's a hair width of a line for each letter. We tend to lean more towards those being high end or modern or luxury. So thinking about that as you pick a font, which I recommend Google Fonts for a free open source font resource. I do need to give the disclaimer that a lot of fonts are copywritten. You have to pay for them and buy a license. Open source fonts, generally, you don't need to buy a license. You can use them. Google Fonts are usable on, you can download them to your desktop. You can also use them on Google Drive and can be used on personal websites. So there's a lot of options. You can always just Google open or search open source fonts that are license free, essentially. So that is something to consider as well. But fonts, as you pick them, are something that you want to keep in mind as well is legibility. Now, the script font I used on this, I'm pretty sure it's Pacifico, but the script font I used on this is a lot tighter. You can see how all the other fonts, these are all the exact same size. So all the other fonts take up a wider space. The script font is much more compressed. A thing to consider is legibility. Not everyone can read cursive well. English is not everyone's first language. Someone's computer, phone, iPad, what have you, might not have great resolution. So they're zooming in to see something. So there's a lot of considerations to take on what fonts you choose. And legibility is a big one, particularly if you end up having business cards made or you're doing actual print materials. You want to make sure that your font is legible without like putting the paper right next to your face or having to use a magnifying glass. So give it to your grandma, give it to your elderly neighbor to be like, can you read it? If they can't read it, the average person probably will struggle to read it as well. You just want to take into consideration anyone who might also have any sort of visual impairment that might not be able to read something as clearly and might not just be able to comprehend a very condensed font just because it's all smooshed together. So that's a thing to consider as you pick these fonts. And it's something you should consider before you start publishing things. You don't ever want to publish everything and then have everyone come back to you and be like, no one can read what you did. So making sure that you kind of do a test run with friends, coworkers, your elderly neighbor, and making sure they can read it is a big important thing before you start publishing it on any sort of website. Once you have fonts, you can go into colors. Now, this is my personal brand color palette. It's the one that I used for my portfolio website, which if you've downloaded the workbook, you have been onto my portfolio website so you can see how I've used it. Within the workbook, I do have a formula that I use quite often to develop brand color palettes, and it's what I use to develop this one. So I am going to make the wonderful disclaimer that I really, really like the colors yellow and pink. And when I say yellow and pink, I mean like bright, bright sunshine yellow. I have a sunshine yellow chair in my living room, and like hot pink, like Barbie pink. If I could get away with using those two colors on everything I do, I would. But it does remind me very, very much of a elementary school strawberry lemonade stand. So I try not to use those colors together particularly often.
That's a good call.
I've been doing this for a long time. One would hope that I had that thought before I papered the world. So, but I did know I wanted to use yellow. Yellow is my very favorite color. So when I was picking my brand, I knew I wanted to use yellow. I was looking toward color theory, which there are so many resources online for color theory of what emotional associations we make with certain colors. A lot of it's cultural, so there can be some differences across the globe, but there are some general kind of consensus that we have come to for certain colors. So as I was thinking about my brand, I just want to let you all know that this is like color palette number 9. This took so many different variations to come up with the one that I liked and worked well for what I wanted to say. So a quick color theory overview is yellow generally brings the association of creativity, energy, happiness, joy. Pinks tend to lean towards optimism or playfulness. Also can be like very feminine or girly. Blue tends to be about trust or wisdom or loyalty. Black has protection, stability, elegance, class. And then white is generally a base neutral. It can also mean things like purity or things like that. But white's generally, in this case, a base neutral. It doesn't really mean anything for me other than the fact that when I was building my website, I wanted to have a white background. So as I was building my brand, I wanted colors that embodied what I personally liked and the type of brand voice I was using. And these are the colors I came up with. So I have a blue, I have 2 shades of pink, I have bright yellow, and then I have black and white. Of these colors, I like 4 of them. I am not a huge fan of black and white. I don't like using stark black and stark white, but they do work well on websites for text and backgrounds. So those are my 2 base neutral colors. So this took me weeks to do. And I will say a lot of color palettes is putting a bunch of colors on the Canva, on the Adobe Illustrator, on MS Paint, and moving them around until you find a combination that you like. If that seems daunting to you, you can always Google good color palette. You can Pinterest nice color palette with blue and see what comes up and kind of build it from there. If all of this still seems really, really, really daunting to you, you can find a nice designer friend and pay them to do it for you. That's always an option. Mm-hmm. But I will give you a couple quick things. This is an example. So we have person B. Person B is a corporate executive. They wanted a personal brand that evoked trust, innovation, protection, and hope for a brighter future. And they really wanted to use the colors blue and yellow in the final color palette. So this is the color palette they came up with. Their main color is stark 100% black. Their blue is 100% blue. Their yellow is 100% yellow. And then they have white. And while these colors match, there's nothing inherently wrong with it. It does lend itself to looking a little bit like something a kindergarten would have in their classroom because it's such bright primary colors. And it doesn't really match the sort of elevated look he wanted for his brand that had the innovative and the protection and that kind of thing, that had these big feelings he wanted to take to it. So what we did was we shifted a little bit. Instead of black being the main color, we turned it, just like my brand colors, into a base neutral color, something that they can use for text, something that they can use for titles. It's not the main color anymore. The main color is now a dark blue. It's less vibrant. It's a little more black shaded versus just a 100% blue color. And then we went with a lighter version of that as well to kind of give it more depth. The yellow, we took it from the bright 100% sunshine school bus yellow to something leaning more towards a goldenrod color yellow, so a little bit more toned down. And it makes everything a bit more, and we kept the white, and makes everything a bit more balanced. It gives you more nuance, and that's kind of where a lot of people, I feel, trip up if you're not a designer or work in an artistic or creative field, using 100%, if you go into like the RBG, or you remember from elementary school where you had your little color palettes, you had red, blue, and yellow, and to make all of your colors, if you use 100% yellow, it's this, and if you use 100% red, it's that. You want to have a little bit of other colors in there. You want your RGB slider on wherever you're using your colors to have a little bit of everything else, just so that when you put other colors next to it, it looks a little bit less like a kindergartner's art project and a little bit more that these colors blend together in some sort of way. So again, if you have questions, reach out to me, reach out to designer friends. There are so many resources online as well about colors and color theory. If you need to, go find a color wheel that has all of the colors that will also help you. There are so many things about color palettes. I clearly enjoy them. I like them. I love colors. So always happy to talk about it with anybody who wants to. So this is a place to start. And if there is you should like at least one color in your color palette, please. Don't build a color palette that you don't like just because the color theory said it matched your brand. There should be one color in there that you truly enjoy. Okay, which brings us to our end.
Well, Alex, thank you so much on that crash course on fonts, on colors, color theory. If you're anything like me, that is very fun to listen to, but extremely overwhelming. So if you're like me, just hire someone that knows how to do the job and knows how to listen to their clients. And so that's what I always do. And I'm always a happy camper. So thank you so much. I hope you all enjoyed this session with us. Please go back and, as Alex said, a lot of these questions that we did go through today, they're all in the workbook, right? Go back, do the exercises, talk to your community, and make sure that once you get to the point where you can have fun and create, that you either outsource to someone that you trust and that you know that they're going to respect your vision as well. Or if you want to get your hands dirty and play around with some free resources that we mentioned throughout the session, please be our guest. We're always more than welcome and happy to be a resource wherever we can for the Alpha Media. And anyone that's looking to learn more about personal branding, how do they create their own personal brand? And that actually makes us very excited to welcome you to join our third and final session of this personal series
On May 2nd.
On May 2nd, which will be a deep dive into how do you market your brand new personal brand on LinkedIn. So I know we spent session 1 auditing your personal brand, session 2 creating your new personal brand, and then all of that hard work has to actually be shown in a cohesive way. So we're gonna be walking you through and teaching you how do you write your impactful headline, right? It doesn't matter if you have a beautiful brand and no one gets excited to even click on your LinkedIn profile to see it. How do you choose the perfect profile picture? So putting your best foot forward on online platforms. How do you write a very strong about you section without you just repeating your resume, which is a talent, and so much more. So we hope that you can join us for that third session. Again, Alex and I are more than happy to be a resource. If you have questions prior to that third session, either on today's session or LinkedIn overall, please don't hesitate to reach out to us.
And it seems like we don't have any questions. So we'll just leave this little QR code up for another little bit. And so we just want to thank you all for joining us. And I know I am looking forward to the marketing part of this personal brand series because it is something that I admittedly am not wonderful at. And I can do the creating part. I can't do the marketing part. That is so wildly outside my sphere of comfort that I'm like, I will happily build as many brands as I can. I do not want to have to give you a marketing plan about it. So I'm looking forward to hearing your part. So I'm excited. So hopefully you all have scanned this. If you did not have time to scan it, please reach out to me or Zuhaili and we can give you the link in. You can just DM us on LinkedIn. So thank you. Gracias. Obrigada. Have a beautiful rest of your week.